Facts be damned.
But the Reds announced it too in their social media.
Did they?
Mhm.
Well, guys, it's been a couple minutes since I've had to admit anybody into the room, so let's go ahead and get started. And for openers, I'm actually hoping this might be our last Zoom book club that we go back to the libraries. I don't want to say definitely, but I have a feeling they're going to open the libraries back up. I don't know how many people haven't been vaccinated yet in the group, but at least most of the folks I know have been vaccinated. So any comments on that?
Let's do it.
I'm hopeful that we can do that, and if we can, I'd like to get our annual meeting back on the books.
Yeah.
Larry Baum's here. Hopefully he still has his speech ready to go. Had over a year to polish it, so
That's right. That's right. I haven't been doing much of anything else but working on that.
I hope so.
It's been a fun ride. It's been a fun ride on Zoom, but you guys gotta do what you guys gotta do, and so that means that suspending these meetings, that's okay with me.
I think from a timing perspective, the next book club would probably be August. And Rick, we can kind of talk about maybe making the September date. I know we got to start scheduling around OSU football.
Right.
So that's the only downside of that. Maybe we'll flip flop them and do a annual meeting, but we'll either look to schedule for the 8 o'clock games, because it seems like Ohio State always gets a lot of primetime games. So anyways, keep your eye out on our schedule, and we're probably going to have that coming soon. Mark Miller, I think yours is what, August 7th?
17th.
17th. Okay. I knew that was all right.
August 7th is my birthday, if anybody wants to put that on their calendar.
Mark, is your meeting going to be a live, or is it a Zoom meeting?
We're going to be live somewhere, even if we have to go to a park and a shelter house.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks for coming in today for this discussion on ballparks. Anybody want to lead off with overall comments on the book and content?
I thought when I saw it, I was getting a college textbook, and it might be that for some class somewhere.
Yeah, I thought I really enjoyed it. I just thought it was packed with all kind of sociology, demographics, baseball history, architectural history for the layman. I just thought it was a nice combination of all those things. I really learned a lot from it. This group here, we're pretty familiar with these ballparks and all that, but I learned so much. The trends, the way things change, the outlook, the relation, particularly as he stressed all through the book, the relationship with the city, whether it's, the ballpark's in that right downtown, suburbs, business district, wherever it is, and the way those things changed over the years and all that. So I thought he was pretty rough on the donut cookie cutter era, and I guess we all are. But as I mentioned a time or two ago, I just have such wonderful memories of going to Riverfront that I'm not quite as anti as most, but those were just golden years, Rose Bench, Perez, all that, Joe Morgan, everything. I just enjoyed that, going to those games. Well, I went to a few Crosley games in the 60s before Riverfront was open, and I remember walking into Riverfront, first few times, it was just dazzling. It was so nice. I mean, it just, restrooms, concessions, concourse, parking, just everything was so much better. And, we all know what those fields were like and the drawbacks of them, but I just have so many fun memories. Ohio State usually closed at 4:30 during the summer. We were on a 7:30 to 4:30 schedule. And my wife and I, one would call the other and would say, pretty nice night. You want to go? And we'd hop in the car, spur of the moment, run down there, get there by game time, just have a wonderful time on a summer night, sitting out watching that, one of the greatest teams of all time. And so just pleasant memories of that. So
I think from architectural point of view, he is right that there is a sense of what city am I in here? So I think from architectural point of view, that's what he was talking about, not specifically the baseball involved in it, because certainly there were some great 70s teams in Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia too, as well as just playing in those parks. But he was looking at it strictly from an architectural angle, and looking at that area. There's really nothing much differentiated between the parks. It just kind of blends in together.
In my other life, I'm chairman of the Victorian Village Commission, which is an architectural review commission that whose approvals are required before getting building permits down here in our particular slice of Columbus. So I found this book really interesting as far as the challenge of fitting big buildings in the author's ideas as to the challenges of fitting large and often alien buildings into neighborhoods. I thought it was an excellent book. And by the way, I have fond memories of Municipal Stadium in Cleveland, but that didn't make it a good ballpark. It was very, very difficult to find a seat that you could observe the game without binoculars, except that some games were so sparsely attended that by the fourth inning, one could get behind home plate.
Some games, how about most games other than opening day would be a fair statement.
I showed up for a lot of Yankee games, which were often decently attended, but I remember a weekday game, Ron Guidry threw a 2-hitter, and I was watching his slider fall off the table from about 4 rows back behind home plate after buying some reserve seat back under the upper deck, obscured by a post, but there we are.
The posts were always a problem if you're a Yankees fan. I used to go with a friend of mine who was a Yankees fan, and he would insist on wearing his hat and getting the tickets. And we ended up behind a post every time. Rick, take the hat off. Didn't matter. He wore it up there. Sure enough, we're sitting behind some 5-foot wide post and kept catching the game. And we tried to move, and the usher would usher us back. There's 3,000 people in the stadium. And we're thinking, okay, Rick, you got to get rid of it. So by getting to meet Steinbrenner after one of the games, we're coming out, and the Yankees had gotten swept. And he's, we'll get him in New York. We'll get him in New York. He was shaking everybody's hands. And so that was the best part of the trip, I think. But it was, I don't know why I ended up behind the post every time, but it was an interesting park.
In many ways, it was an interesting park.
No, I do remember going to a game in the 70s. My wife and I took my mom and dad up to a game. They hadn't been to a game for a long time when we got there. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's got to be an away game. I misread the paper, but it wasn't. It was a home game. There just wasn't anybody there. There was nobody going in and out of the gates, and we pulled up and walked down to the stadium and thought, oh my gosh, I made a terrible mistake. There's no game today, but we walked up and there was a game. There was just hardly anybody there. It looked like an off day. But I remember my very first game I ever went to as a little boy in 1953, and the Yankees at Cleveland, and that place was packed.
Yeah.
And just the electric atmosphere, you know, all that stuff, and just huge crowd, and just what a, you know, for my very first major league game I ever went to, what an experience that was, you know, all the Hall of Famers that were in the lineups that day for both teams. And it was just, but that was real Cleveland Yankee, you know, where they, every year they were fighting for the pennant 1-2. And it was just a great day. It's too bad it declined to the point that it was before they built the new Jacobs Field.
Well, one thing the book gave me that was interesting was just to view Municipal Stadium as the first multi-purpose donut, which it actually was.
Yeah.
But I never thought of it that way before.
No.
Familiarity brings something.
Well, you know, I really like the book myself. In fact, I haven't finished reading it because a lot of these baseball books I read as quickly as I can because there isn't an awful lot of content. I mean, not that they're bad, but this one has so much content to savor it. I've kind of tried to slow down my reading, but I've really enjoyed not only looking at the pictures, but getting some feeling for the owners and who built some of these stadiums or had them built, and what some of their kind of design principles were, things that were and were not important to them. I found that kind of fascinating too. And some of the things that went into their thinking about what to erect and where to erect it and how much to spend on it. So I think this is whoever said this was like a textbook, I agree. The quality of the paper, the quality of the prints, the quality of the writing, I think it's first rate.
I'd always given HOK the credit for Camden Yards, but it turns out it was Larry Lucchino and company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to pick up on something.
Blake, what did you think about the Forbes Field write-up? I was curious. I found that particularly fascinating.
I did. Joshua, it looked like you were getting ready to speak first, and I'll hit.
Oh, thanks. First of all, thank you for letting me join your group. I'm in Eugene, Oregon. And my wife thinks I'm crazy to wake up early at 6:30.
And I don't think this has been your first meeting with us.
No, I have to say I have found one silver lining to the horrible dark cloud of the pandemic is to be able to join a lot of these meetings from around the country, and people have been so welcoming and so much fun to just chat baseball with people, you know, who I might not have otherwise met. So on one hand, I'm sad if this stuff ends. On the other hand, I'm glad I've had this opportunity, and I want to thank you again for letting me intrude this morning. What I want to say, I want to pick up, I think James, I was just taking a note because I want to make sure I say the right people because I don't know you all, unfortunately, yet. But the idea of the concrete donut, right? And your first game, I think you were talking about in 1953. And the reason I love this book so much is I grew up in New York, in Queens, as a New York Mets fan. I was born in 72. And my first game was, I was 5 years old. As soon as I knew what baseball was at Shea Stadium. And I don't know how many of you knew that or have been there. But to me, it was like I grew up in Shea Stadium. That's what I tell people. But looking back today, it's ugly. You know, it's not fun. It's not, you know, but to me, it was, as a kid, I loved it. But my story is that my mom, who was the one who gave me baseball. So it wasn't my dad, like the usual story you'll hear, like a dad to a son to a grandson, whatever, but it was my mom who grew up in Brooklyn as a big Dodger fan, and Ebbets Field, which of course was really well covered in this book I found. And she was born in 36. So when Jackie Robinson, you know, in 47, when the Dodgers won in 55, and when of course they left after 57, this was huge for her. And she would tell me stories about Ebbets Field. And I think that's why I'm a Mets fan, because growing up in Queens, you know, we had the Yankees, of course, but you know, it was too easy to love them because I better be careful here, I guess, of the audience I'm speaking with, but you know, they were the champions, they were the best all the time. I remember this is late 70s, so you're talking 78, 79, all that crazy stuff. But to me, maybe it's my mom giving me the National League feel or something from the Dodgers, but the book was, I have to echo what someone else said, it was great in terms of the history, and not just of the ballparks, but how they fit in. And I don't know how many of you know New York or not, but you know, there's no easy down. I mean, you can't have a ballpark in Manhattan, although you did, right? So people would think if you think of like the Midtown, the business district, you're not gonna have a ballpark there. And then you have like Target Field, right in downtown Minneapolis where I've been, which is one of the newer ones. And I love that kind of thing. And so I think he did a really good job. And also, it is like a textbook in a sense, because it sort of breaks up the history and each chapter or each section, the older ones and the Evansville, the concrete donuts, and kind of where we are today. So I just want to echo kind of what some people had said, and people today laugh at me when I say, "Oh, Shea Stadium, I love that," because it was this multi-purpose. I mean, there's one year I think that the Yankees and Mets and the football teams all played there because of different reasons. And so anyway, I just want to add that thought and appreciate what someone had said before. And thanks again for letting me intrude this morning.
No, you're quite welcome.
Another part of the legacy of Robert Moses.
Well, my perspective, back to your question, Joe. I mean, first of all, I love the book. I mean, I've always been kind of a ballpark geek. I mean, I haven't been to the new Texas, but I just completed like all the current parks a couple years ago, and I've been to, I think, 52 parks now, counting the ones that aren't around, and if add in my minor league parks, and I'm up around 175. But I do remember my first trip to Forbes Field. I was 10 years old. The big difference, and I wish I could do it again. I wish, because I have such different eyes now. Now I typically do, if I don't walk all the way around the stadium, I walk pretty close to all the way around. I really want to get a feel for what the neighborhood and the surrounding area is. Whereas at Forbes Field, we just kind of walked in, but I remember being surprised that it looked like just a building on the outside with these arched entryways. And then the field just looked so big, and we were behind first base, and Don Clendenin was the Pirates first baseman. And I felt like Clendenin looked like he was 7'10". He was such a tall first baseman. So I really loved that ballpark. I wish I could revisit it and take it in more. But it was a big deal when they moved to Three Rivers. And I mean, from an ease of getting in and out, coming in from Ohio, it was an easier ballpark to get into. But I wish I could redo Forbes Field as an adult, just like, I wish I could
agree.
Go to that
That's
1974 Genesis concert again. Anyway, so the couple of things I did love the way they laid out the history in there. I mean, at times it was a little New York centric, I think, but I still loved I thought he gave, with the exception of a few cities, they gave really good descriptions of how they ended up choosing the land, and at what point, whether they were like pushing toward the suburban areas, ease of traffic versus fan experiences. I thought he laid all that stuff out really well, and he gave some perspectives that I didn't really think about. I never gave much thought about like the hotels that just went up at where Wrigley is, and how that really changes that neighborhood, putting that what was it, a Hilton or whatever is there. Yeah. And how that neighborhood really has changed. I probably haven't been to Wrigley in 3 or 4 years, but that was under construction when I think I was last there. But I absolutely love the book, but I'm also kind of a ballpark geek, and so it was right up my alley, and it delivered. I did try to get Paul to speak at the thing. He never answered my email. He has his own website and a place that, send me an email. I sent 2. and he didn't answer either. So
Too bad. Too bad.
yeah, maybe I needed to show, like, have a picture of myself wearing a Yankee hat. Maybe that would have worked.
I've got a hat like that if you need to borrow.
Yeah, I have a few friends.
Okay.
So anyway, so enough from me. Who else?
I like the backstories of all the ballparks, especially the financing and politics and wanted, and I want to dig into more of that on some of them, like find out more about the neighborhood around New Comiskey that they sacrificed in order to build the park. I mean, he mentioned it, but he didn't really go into detail about it. Yeah, I guess I enjoyed the book a lot, and especially enjoyed the backstories. So.
Did anybody near the end when I haven't been to the new Atlanta ballpark yet. Has anybody been there? The brand new one after Turner Field. They mentioned in there was an example, of they built the ballpark instead of, the community exists and you build a ballpark. They built the ballpark, then they built the community around it. And he mentions it's like the Easton Town Center in Columbus, Ohio. I was stunned by that, but Easton, I mean, we kind of take it for granted being here in Columbus, but I know architecturally and real estate development, all those kind of fields, Easton Town Center is like a model, like people all over the country know of that unique, groundbreaking kind of idea, mixed use shops and shopping and residential offices, restaurants and all that together. But they specifically mentioned that. So those of us that live in Columbus, we're glad to have all of you guys from around the country. That's just great. Those of us that live here in Columbus, we go to Easton all the time. Well, when there's not a pandemic going on, but we go there all the time. And to bring that in, okay. And so that kind of hit me when I saw that.
I did go to that ballpark. I think it was during its first year. Was one of those baseball trips Wayne and I and Ernie were on, and that actually is a pretty good description. I mean, it was probably a 2-block all around the stadium of just shops and everything built towards towards shopping. And it could exist. And my thoughts at the time was, this is probably a 12-month-a-year destination now as a result, which most ballparks probably are not. I didn't care for it that much, mainly because from a parking perspective, it was kind of a snarl getting into that little area because it's right off a highway with I mean, maybe because I'm not a local guy, we didn't know the back ways in, but it was $35 parking. This was on a Sunday morning. We were fortunate that it was a Sunday afternoon ball game. I just imagined it really being tough to go there at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday night with business traffic. There's a lot of business offices in the area, and it left me not wanting to be at Easton right now. And it had a climbing wall. It had an arcade. I mean, it was, and the climbing wall and the arcade were inside the ballpark. So it was really a theme park. And I felt like the book really kind of hammered the decision to go up to Cobb County and and really focus in on like their suburban white fan base and kind of alienate their city fan base. So anyways, been there.
I don't know. That makes me not want to go there.
Yeah.
Well, Blake,
Me-
can you get there very easily? Do you know, by rapid transit, or are you forced to drive there, or are there alternate?
You have to take, you can take some rapid transit, but I think ultimately you have to get off and get on a bus. So it's a multi
It's not as
step thing,
straightforward.
which makes it so it's not really very accessible. So they expect people to come by cars. For me, it was a checklist. You know, I mean, I wanted to do all the parks, and that was, you know, one of my last two that I had to take care of. So
I've
Yeah,
seen
I
a
think
video on it. You can, they show the construction of that area. So the video, you know, a time lapse. So it starts out with all trees, like it's a forest. And then they start to clear away the trees and then start to build the whole community in the ballpark.
I mean, the good thing for me was when I did go, the night before we were in New Rome, which was one of the Braves farm teams. So we were only, you know, an hour away from the ballpark, and the ballpark sits up in the northwest quadrant or northwest suburb. So coming from the north on 75, it was, you didn't have to get into Atlanta traffic. So it was convenient from that standpoint. But again, it was a Sunday morning when we were driving in.
I think he mentioned
Atlanta-
that the residents of Cobb County refused to be part of the rapid transit system. So they cut themselves off from that option.
What
Unless
was
that's changed.
interesting, and maybe, Rick, maybe
You're
you'll
right about
remember,
that.
I think it was at the 9 conference where they talked about even moving the statues from Atlanta County Stadium as to which statues were going to move up to the new thing and who owns the statues, because some of them were publicly funded. And I think they were talking about Atlanta, and they ended up not moving the Henry Aaron statue, but rather creating a new Henry Aaron statue for the ballpark. And nobody wanted the Cobb, so the Cobb statue ended up going to Greenville, or Royston. Is it Royster or Royster?
It was Royston to his museum, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Cobb.
Somebody talked about that at the 9 meeting, and Blake, you're right. There was quite a bit of controversy about moving the statues up there, and I thought it was pretty comical. Nobody wanted the Ty Cobb statue, but it went home to Royston. So,
Of course, here in Columbus, we're developing our own ballpark as theme park neighborhood, with an arena, a soccer stadium, and Huntington Park all there in a row, with a relatively new neighborhood being built up all around them. So, you know, Atlanta, I think, is its own sort of world because of the siting decision they made and its rapid transit problems and all those other things. But several other cities seem to be going in that direction, and the author seemed to take a dim view of that. On the other hand, if you build a ballpark that makes all the real estate around it more valuable, then putting hotels next to Wrigley seems almost inevitable. What do you guys think?
It's true.
I would agree. Yeah.
I'll add in something here if I could. I don't know how well any of you know Oregon, but I'm in Eugene, which is where the University of Oregon is. Portland is about 2 hours, 2.5 hours north of here. But there's a lot of buzz now with the Oakland A's announcement that they may be leaving. And Portland is one of the 3 or 4 cities that really is trying to lure them now. And they've had a group up in Portland for a few years now that has really been working very actively to try to get people or to try to get a baseball team to move there. And they have the ballpark as theme park type situation with the multi development and all that kind of thing. And I think, Jack, you were talking about being on like a planning commission or a review board or something like that. And, I'm a traditionalist. I like the idea of the ballpark being a baseball park only, and that's the destination. But I think just economically, it looks like that maybe what's needed. I don't know. I hate to use that word, but, in order to get enough private money behind it, and there's some Nike money behind it, because anything out here in Oregon has Nike money behind it, of course. But you have people who, in the Seattle football team, the quarterback, Russell, I can't remember his last name. Wilson, thank you. He's involved in getting investors and stuff. So, if it's one of these things that, but for the development or the public-private, partnership or the whatever else happens, if that's the only way to get a team or get a ballpark made these days, I don't know. Maybe that's what's happening. I'm not a fan, but then again, if it brings Major League Baseball, here to Oregon, I'll go up there a few times to see we have a minor league team here in Eugene, which is great. And she just moved up from low A to high A. That's a whole other story about minor leagues. But you know what? If it's good for the economy and it brings more people and more money in, then I could see that's where we're going.
I thought one of the interesting things was cities originally were, trying to block people from building ballparks. Then they were reluctantly helping them build them. And now you got things like Portland and Las Vegas, and I think there's another city, all trying to build stadiums right now just to lure teams away. And they are all building them as, attractions in and to themselves. And, the one in Vegas, I guess, they're going to put casinos next to it, and they're going to build it all up and put an amusement park in. So, it's just part of urban development, I guess, is this whole model of draw in a anchor thing, and baseball seems to be a good one.
According to the book, that wasn't a new concept either, I don't think. It talked about St. Louis when they built their park way back.
Yep.
Like a carnival atmosphere.
It's funny, we did that book, the Beer and Whiskey League, which focused a lot on Chris Vander, and it's like now I never heard of the guy until we read that book, and now it's like I feel like in the history of baseball, his name actually shows up a lot.
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah,
I kind of smile about that, because I mean it was one of the books we picked that like I didn't even vote for. It's like I'm not interested in this, but I'll go with whatever people vote for, and turns out this guy's an innovator. So I found it interesting.
Yeah, he's on the ballot for the 18th century forgotten heroes now as one of those players or persons that should be recognized.
So hard to argue against it.
Like to have a beer with him,
Yeah,
so to speak.
better be the right kind of beer, right brand.
Yeah. Go ahead, Larry.
One of the things I wondered about in reading the book was how much difference the quality of a stadium makes. I spent most of my childhood at what was probably the worst stadium in the major leagues, and maybe the worst stadium in all of baseball, Candlestick. And I wondered, did that hurt attendance? It was such a bad stadium. They got very good attendance when the Giants were winning. They got bad attendance when they were losing. And I wonder whether, with the exception of a few places like Wrigley, whether it has all that much impact that you have a good stadium or a bad stadium, whether that's a big draw for people or not. And I don't have an answer to that, but I kept thinking about that as I was reading the history.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It may have something to do with people's baseline expectations. I mean, if you're a kid and you go to Candlestick, you might start thinking this is what it's supposed to be like.
Was Wrigley a big draw before WGN?
Wrigley as I recall, did not have particularly good attendance until the team got good and they got the WGN connection.
I mean,
Oh, well, the ballpark helps there too, because of being one of the last two left. I think, years ago, it was just one of many, so it didn't stand out. And now Fenway and Wrigley, people like us go to those parks just to be at the park. It doesn't matter who's playing, where they are in the standings, whatever. You just want to go to Wrigley Field or you want to go to Fenway just to see a game there. So, but that wouldn't have been true 40, 50 years ago or something, when all the other old ballparks were still around. Now, if they're the only two, they're like shrines.
And certainly the author lumped Tiger Stadium in as a shrine. I found it interesting that architect came in and took a look at the stadium and said, structurally, it's very sound. And, they ought to just upgrade it. And they really wanted the luxury boxes, that Illich.
I think another dimension of that is size of stadium, right? Someone said what a beautiful stadium Cleveland had. The mistake on the lake, as it's known to, or was by Clevelanders. But, with 80,000 people, why worry other than when the Yankees come in or whatever, advanced sales? When our daughter was growing up, when it's a beautiful Sunday, and we said, why don't we go to a ball game? Get up Sunday morning, have breakfast, have lunch, go down there and can buy 3 tickets, 20 rows behind home plate. There was no advanced sale. And, they made a big deal about Jacobs Field, downsize, and people were going to need to buy tickets ahead of time because there won't be as many tickets available. Certainly the team was getting better, but there was a big deal about size of stadium for baseball games that was optimum, and it wasn't 80,000.
Yeah. The other thing, back to Candlestick. I mean, I actually really loved I had 2 visits to Candlestick. One of the things I liked was staying in downtown. They had, I think, 3 or 4 bus stops where you could get direct bus ride to Candlestick Park, and I took advantage of those both times I went. But I remember as a kid watching, the game of the week on TV, and because of Willie Mays and McCovey and Marichal, they were on a lot because they were a really good team in the 60s. And just remember, after they moved those fences in the vision of like a home run and all these kids sprinting to the end of the fence trying to get the home run ball was kind of a vivid memory. And I'm thinking, why doesn't everybody do that? It looks like so much fun. So my Candlestick memory.
My
I have a
Candlestick,
question on the size of the stadiums. If anybody remember about 25 years ago when cable TV was taking off, Major League Baseball was proposing that all new stadiums be about 15,000 people. And they were going to force people to buy into MLB baseball. If you wanted to watch a game, you would have to subscribe to it on cable. And they had this elaborate plan that they were going to make all this money off of the broadcast of the games. They said, oh, you get to see all these games. Now you don't have to waste your time going down to a ballpark. And the seats would become premium, all box seats, $1,000 tickets. And thankfully, I think that thing's died. But, there was a time when they were talking about just making them the size of Huntington Park. And that would be the size of all ballparks. And it was a little disconcerting to me as somebody would like to go.
Well, and Cleveland's not alone in this, but in Progressive Field, or was Jacobs Field, it's been modernized at least a couple times. In the most recent modernizations, they cut back on the number of loges because while they were big sellers in the 90s, they can't sell them anymore to anywhere near as much. So they repurposed them, but they also repurposed the whole right field so that it's basically a big stand-up bar. And part of the message, and I've heard this about other stadiums, we're trying to attract a different clientele, a fan, the casual fan who's looking for something to do on a Friday night. And for $15, I can get a stand-up ticket, get some beer, and maybe see a ball game if it doesn't get in the way of my socializing. I mean, it's just so different, but I've heard it from a number of sources who were involved that was a big deal because Cleveland needed those kind of people coming into the games because there weren't enough true baseball fans attending the games. And one of the arguments was, why do I need to go down there when I can sit in front of my 65-inch TV and watch every Tribe game and get a better view? So I don't think that model that you talked about is dead. I think it's been repurposed somewhat.
That's a great point, Joe. And to add to that, even the marketing of all the commercials with Tribe Baseball, they tie into that corner, where everyone's drinking and having a good time. And that's a great point. And really, you wonder also on that younger age demographic, maybe it's a foot in the door strategy in the reverse sense where they're going for beer and they're, to your point, discovering baseball, and then you become a fan.
Right. That's the big hope, isn't it, Jeff? That's the big hope.
Right. And I think it's working to a certain extent because I can sense that when I do go up there. I mean, I was just up there for the Yankees series, and I mean, you just want to hang out there as long as you can. And then the start of the game, you get to your seats. But I mean, it's a really interesting point. And I think Cleveland is certainly out front on that, and certainly reflective of the city as well, of that clientele.
Pairing beer and baseball is not a new marketing strategy.
Well, Jeff, I hope you're right in the beer to baseball fan, but I'll never forget my wife got us for one of my birthdays in the 90s 20-game package tickets for the Tribe, and my wife and daughter and I, we would go to 20 games per year. And this one game we were sitting there and these young people came and sat down, this high school age young lady sitting next to me. She said, "Do you mind if I ask you a question?" I said, "No, I can answer it." And I thought, oh my God, she's going to ask some question that I'm not. She said, "Could you tell me which of these people on the field is the goaltender?"
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Oh, okay, we got some work to do here."
Oh,
But no, Steve, I hope you're right. I hope you are. I truly hope you're right.
I know that the Coors Field has done a really nice job of finding a section where it appeals to kind of the college age to 30-year-olds, where it's a stand up, and it's very popular at Coors Field. And I happened to be there at a game with my niece, who was, probably 30 years old. And as we walked by, and I really felt like the old guy walking by.
Yeah.
And I just said, if you want to ditch your uncle, I'll go over here and score the game by myself if you want to just hang for a while.
Hey, Blake,
of course she did, but
you just talked about endangered species, a guy with the scorebook.
Yeah. The other discussion in the book that I just found fascinating with all the trial and errors was the discussion about the retractable roofs and things that happen with the roofs. It was a much more detail than I had ever read about before. I think I saw that thing MLB had on the Astrodome, which that was a lot of trial and error with the Astrodome. But what do people think about the discussion about the retractable roofs, and who do you think did it best?
I went on YouTube. I think I sent you, Blake, a copy of one of them. There are some really good YouTube, high-speed withdrawals of the stadiums. I think the one up in Toronto, that one is really cool, where it sort of folds over itself and disappears. And but it's really neat. And the mechanics behind it, it's like running a train station, because they got hundreds of motors pulling these things around, and it's just amazing. And if you go out on YouTube though, there's some really cool videos if you want to look at them. I thought it was really fabulous.
I'm with the author. I think retractable roofs are a bane on the existence of baseball because baseball is meant to be watched out of doors, and any decent retractable roof system requires making your ballpark really, really big. On the other hand, if baseball wants to exist in Florida or Seattle, maybe we need a few of them, but
even Texas
or Texas or Arizona. But that really, it seems to me, would take away from the entire experience of the game to be in a gigantic living room with a dome.
I went to a game.
The Hubert H. Humphrey Dome was perhaps the very worst dome ever built.
Awful. And that's true what they said about the outfielders losing fly balls. We got there early, of course, and we're watching batting practice and all that. And, you know, you'd see an outfielder look up to catch a ball and he totally lost it. And during the game, it affects the game. I mean, it really does. The center fielder looked up to catch a ball and then he started going like this and it dropped right behind him and rolled all the way to fence for triple, which would have been just an easy can of corn fly ball out anywhere else. So it really affected the game.
I remember when they built the Astrodome, they said, as somebody, if you ever hit one off the roof, they said it was impossible. And I think Mantle in an exhibition game ricocheted one off the frame up there. And they said, well, maybe you can. So, and I think there's a difference between retractables and permanent domes. I think retractables have a place, especially in some of these weird environments. You know, look at the opening day was at Detroit, where you can't even see the baseball because it's snowing so hard. But you know, those places might be able to use a dome for part of the year. But you know, the permanent roofs, I'm not really a fan of.
Well, the Twins, who live in a cold weather environment, if anybody did, deliberately decided to suck it up and do without a retractable roof. And the 5 games a year that you may lose to weather, maybe 10, are a small price to pay for playing the rest of them indoors. But that's just my opinion, which I'm not hesitant to share.
Well, ask our Oregonian, because it really, I mean, it rains out on that West Coast for like 3 solid months.
I did not begrudge Seattle. It's rough.
Okay,
They made that
Seattle,
choice
for example,
twice.
wow, they didn't have a dome. I don't think they could play half the season.
They made that. Well, they actually got by with 6 stadium. Was it 6?
6.
Yeah, SIC.
Yeah, they got by with that for a while, but on the other hand, it drove the pilots out of town. So
I think some of it depends on what kind of fan base you have. That if your fans are right there in a city, you don't have to. But if a lot of them drive in from, like Cincinnati gets a lot from Columbus and Dayton, Springfield, and all that, you got to know there's going to be a game, you know. So, you know, Cincinnati had the AstroTurf, you know, artificial. You're pretty sure it's not going to get rained out, and a dome or retractable makes it a sure thing. You're actually, if you drive 100 miles to come the game, there's actually going to be a game. So that helps the attendance that people take. They don't feel like taking a chance to drive all that way there and then they get rained out. That's, by the way, Ohio State college field, when they put in artificial turf about, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, that really opened it up. First of all, they can practice on it in the spring when the normal field would be muddy. And also it draws in Oregon and California teams and all that. SEC team will now make the trip to do a home and home with us, where before, you know, there's such a high chance of the weather ruining that it all get rained out and all that. Now they know almost for sure that there's gonna be a game. You know, they can play. It's worth making a trip. So
Hmm.
that has something to do with it, I think, where if it's a large city and all the fans are right there and they, can get there in a few minutes, but if the fan base is spread out and they got to come in from all over, it's better to have a roof of some kind.
Has anybody been to Milwaukee or Toronto when the roof has been closed,
I've been to Milwaukee.
with the roof closed?
Yes,
And how was it?
it was actually a minor league game. Dayton was playing one of the Wisconsin teams. It was fine. You couldn't really tell you were inside, to be honest. It was so big. So, and we took a tour of the place and saw how the roof opened. It was great. They've done a lot there, though, to make it look like it's outdoors when it's indoors.
I mean, the
Well-
only indoor park that just I think deserves its bad rap is Tropicana.
Yeah.
It does feel a little like you're playing in a cellar, and the fact that they reach the roof so frequently is kind of weird. It's yeah.
I agree with you, Blake. I was there once on a tour. The only other place that it compared with was we went to a game once at Expos, Montreal, whatever the name of that dump was. And it just had the same sort of feeling. Baseball deserves, even bad baseball, a better environment than this.
Yeah.
If I may, I'll throw in two quick comments. One is I was at the SABR convention in 1987 or 88. I was a teenager and it was in Minnesota. And what part of it, of course, we went to the Metrodome. And I'm a traditionalist. I do not like domes and roofs and all that, but it was the loudest I think I've ever heard anything. And that's, on some hand, maybe it makes or adds to the enjoyment for people. I don't know, but to me, it was just artificial, if you know what I mean, just because it was so loud, the noise stayed inside. And the other quick thing I'll add as the Oregonian, the Pacific Northwest person here, and talk about Seattle. We joke here that there are only two seasons out here. One is rain half the year, and the other half the year is construction, because that's when they do all the road work. Because it's not raining, but it actually rains less over the course of the whole year here than in most cities. My wife is from Portland. I was from New York, like I said, and we looked it up once, and it actually rains more in New York inches wise over the course of a year. The problem is here, it's really contained to like that. Well, I say half the year. She says 8 or 9 months of the year. But
distributed versus localized.
Yeah, exactly. I think Seattle is probably even worse than Portland in terms of rain. And us here in Eugene, where we are, we're actually inland about an hour and a half. So it's not as bad here. We have a minor league team here, like I said. But Astrodome. The other, I'll say one more comment. The other problem with the Astrodome and all that is it created AstroTurf, and that's a whole other story. But not a fan.
I was really interested in that discussion of Shibe Park. I'd always heard of that, but I didn't know what it was, how the architecture and what a grand, just beautiful place that would have been in its prime. And too bad it got torn down, of course, but what an elegant, just incredible place. And then they showed that dome thing. It was on a corner, and the main front door's right on and then they had the little dome cupola, and Connie Mack had his office up. I thought that was just priceless, what a magnificent structure that must have been in its glory days. That's another one that we really, I think all of us would have enjoyed going to a game there.
That was the highlight of the book for me, I think, was, I was aware of the golden age ballparks, so whether it was Shibe Park or Ebbets Field and some of those other ones that unfortunately have not survived to today, but I didn't really know about a lot of the specific characteristics of a lot of those. So, learning about Shibe Park and even like Palace of the Fans in Cincinnati, which I really wasn't aware of. For me, Cincinnati baseball, I'm a Cleveland fan, but for Cincinnati, it kind of started with Crosley Field. For me, I didn't really have any knowledge before that, so to kind of learn about Palace of the Fans was kind of cool too. But for me, at least, that was my favorite part of the book.
By the way, nice to see you, Rick. It's been a while.
Yeah, Rick.
Yeah, it's been too long. So between
Yeah,
work
thanks.
and baby, it's kind of hard to carve out time. But
Don't let those priorities get in your way.
But
Said the
I wanted-
retired guy.
Yeah, but I really wanted to join this one because I had actually gotten this book as a gift about a year or two ago, I think, whenever it came out, and actually had to listen to a lot of this book on tape or through Audible on Amazon. So I would listen to a lot while I was taking care of my daughter, and then kind of flip through the pages when when my wife came home to at least see the pictures. But anyway. Whoever nominated this book, I'm grateful because it was a fun read for sure.
The mention of Crosley Field reminds me of something. You Reds fans, are you aware that there's a replica of Crosley Field up in the suburbs?
Yes.
In Blue
Played
Ash?
on it.
Yeah.
I played on it. Yeah, it's in Blue Ash.
Yeah.
And they took the scoreboard and some of the ticket booths and they laid out the field the same dimensions as Crosley Field. And so the
I never got to
scoreboard's
go
there. Huh?
I never got to go to Crosley because I got to Ohio too late.
You missed it.
It was great to be able to see the replica and get a feel for what the stadium must have been like.
They have the scoreboard there of the last game with your Giants. And so the lineups are still up there, and Hayes hitting third, McCovey fourth, all that. So no, that's it. And they have amateur, high school games and things like that there. And the Ohio Village Muffins got to play a game there one time, and it was quite a thrill. We were the warm-up game for an old timers game between the 61 Yankees and the 61 Reds. And so a lot of the retired major leaguers, as we finished up our 1860 game, they started to come on the field and get warmed up, and I got to talk to some of them and all that. So we had a big crowd that came for the big leaguer game, but we got to be the warm-up game. So we had 4,000 or 5,000 to watch our game, and it was just great. But I got to talk to Ralph Houck, and it was just great.
Jim, some of you guys
didn't
were older
bother-
than old timers, weren't you?
What's that?
Some of you guys were older than the old timers.
No, that's not true. We were nipping at their heels, but not. No, I remember talking to Ralph Houck, and I said, I remember when you caught for the Yankees. And he said, well, I didn't catch very much, but Charlie Silvera and I broke in a lot of gloves for Gilgy. So, because he was like third string, and back in those days, Yogi Berra caught both at games of a double header all the time, and that kind of stuff. So he hardly ever played, but he was very nice about it and signed the ball for me. But getting back to Blue Ash, yes, they have a nice replica, sort of. I mean, it doesn't have all the stadium and everything, but they have elements of the field there. You come in the ticket booth and things like that from Crosley or there.
I thought they moved part of Crosley to Arizona, didn't they?
I
thought they
never
took
heard of
the
that.
seats. I thought they took the seats and some stuff, and we're going to put some developmental league team in.
He went to
some
Kentucky.
fencing maybe, and
He
I
went to
don't know.
Kentucky
It's
for a
been so
while.
long ago now, but I thought they had salvaged parts of it. I didn't know what they did with like the scoreboard and stuff. So maybe Crosley still exists in bits and pieces scattered all over the country.
That'd be nice. I never heard of that.
Any other comments? Before we wrap up this discussion, I'm gonna follow my screen around here, and people tell me what your favorite stadium is. we'll limit it to the big league parks as opposed to the minor leagues. But Rob, you are the first guy on my screen right now.
Well, I think I've got my favorite stadium behind me.
All right.
I chose this one on purpose just because I think that one of the great lines, I actually made sure my wife heard it, was the author quoting somebody saying the three most significant dates in baseball, Jackie Robinson and now I can't even remember what the second one was.
Jackie Robinson.
Second one. The third one he cited was Camden Yards. How
free agency.
That's right.
Free agency.
Yeah, free agency in 75. And I thought that was a very powerful statement because as much as I loved the evolution of stadiums and, you know, everything in life is cyclical, that period when Camden really made a statement and, you know, did a lot to, you know, incorporate. I was kind of appalled. I had never heard that the owner was kind of in favor of tearing down the warehouse at first. And I love out to Boob's Barbecue when I get to go out to Baltimore. And I just think they did such a beautiful job. And I grew up, some of you may have heard me say before, I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, about 90 miles northeast of Baltimore. So when I was a kid, we got to go down to the old Memorial Stadium and see the Robinsons and Jim Palmer. And they were a lot more fun than some of the sorry Phillies teams that I could have had a close to. But when they revitalized downtown Baltimore, the whole waterfront district and put the stadium in, I think it was a beautiful thing. And it did a lot for the entire city of Baltimore.
Cindy?
My internet's been unstable, so hopefully you can hear what I say, but I really liked Great American Ballpark. I thought the author was a little harsh about it because he said it wasn't facing the downtown, it's facing the river. But I think that's the more beautiful part is the river. But I have fond memories, of course, of Riverfront too. And when they were going to replace it, I thought at the time, what's wrong with it? You know, I think this is great until we got the Great American Ballpark where the seats are so much better and you're not, you know, not all the seats were kind of facing the field in Riverfront. Sometimes you had to turn. They're more comfortable. The stadium is cooler. He said something about the gap being an attempt to look at the downtown, but I think the gap is, it makes the breeze come through. Yeah, and it feels so much better. So I really like it there. But I did like Camden Yards. I've only been there once when SABR had their convention there, but I really liked it.
Larry?
Well, I would go with Camden Yards myself, and I can't add anything to what Rob said because I think he described the positives really well. And in a way, it saved baseball. That's exaggerating, of course, but it made it a lot more pleasant to go to baseball games when you had stadiums like that. So again, that's all I would add to what Rob said, which I thought was absolutely on target.
Jeff?
Well, I would say Polo Grounds, but I don't think I'm allowed to pick an old stadium, right? But
have you been there?
No, only in my mind.
You can't pick it.
Only in my mind. I would probably say San Francisco, just from the standpoint of just you know, I just think that design is remarkable. But I mean, the nearby. I'm sorry. Yeah, the new Pac Bell or whatever they're calling it. But Pittsburgh's not too far behind, quite frankly. So I know I'm scattered all over the board with stadiums. So,
Rick?
Mine is Camden Yard because to me it was sort of just a step back in time when I went to the stadium for the first time. And I love the ballparks that meld in with maybe an old factory or building or something like that makes it just makes you feel like you're back in the time when the neighborhood was part of the ballpark and vice versa, where the fans knew the the ball players because they live near the ballparks and things like that. I didn't read the book. I've been quiet today. I confessed to Blake a couple weeks ago that this was going to be the first of the books that I hadn't read. I did pick it up and take a quick look at Blake's suggestion about the treatment of Cleveland, because it's going to dive into something that I'm working on with a book about Billy Evans. And he was the GM at the time the ballpark opened in 31 or 32. But anyway, Camden Yard. But I honestly think that PNC really fits that bill as well. And I might enjoy my experiences more at PNC. I like looking at the skylines. No offense to Great American, but I love to look at the skylines of the at PNC and watch at dusk as it's starting to get dark and the ball game's going, and you see the changing light on the city. So, but Camden is my favorite because it was the first, and it really was a step back in time.
Jim?
Oh, boy, there's so many. I'm kind of in Cindy's camp here. I'm so thankful we have a really fine stadium for the Reds now that's only a short drive away relatively. Camden's terrific, Pittsburgh's terrific. I would say Candlestick is my least favorite of all the parks. It's the only one I ever had to leave in the 6th inning in July because it got too cold. So that's out. But yeah, all these new ones that I've been to. There's some I haven't been to. I'm really looking forward. I haven't been to Petco, haven't been to Philadelphia yet. So there's looking forward. They're all an experience of themselves, but I certainly enjoy the Reds games now.
Mike?
I get unmuted here. I think it's Wrigley. You can stay downtown, take the red line right into the stadium. I love the charm. They have the best hot dogs in the world. You get a good Nathan's with everything on it. You're having. But I've loved going to Wrigley every time I've been there, and I've even watched the Reds there a couple of times get crushed as usual. But that's a great thing. I agree with Cindy. I think the slam on not doing the skyline. I think it's neat looking over the river, and at night you see the barges coming up and down the Ohio, and it's just, I think it's more charming. So I think they did it right.
Mark?
Well, I have to go back to my childhood, and I'd have to say Crosley Field was my favorite. And something nobody's mentioned was smells. You could go into Crosley and you had the guy roasting the peanuts right there on the outside. There was cigar smoke. There was stale beer, the urine from the troughs in the men's room.
You're really selling it.
Yeah. You combine all those smells, and that's baseball to me when you went and you saw the green grass as you went up the tunnel. So I'd have to say Crosley. And I'd say my least favorite was Wrigley. I found that to be the most uncomfortable stadium to sit in that there I've been to. Sorry.
Dave?
Of the ones I've actually been all the way inside, I'm going to say PNC, where Reggie and I went a couple years ago for our anniversary. Again, the views out toward the city and over the river and the bridges, and it was just a great park to be in. I want to get to a game at Camden because I just love the concept of Camden Yards. And we've been as far as the bar and the gift shop, because we've been in Baltimore when the Orioles were out of town, so we haven't got to a game yet. And I can't remember it's not Boog's, but Rob, what's the other bar there at Camden?
I don't know what you're referring to.
There's a bar that's named after a former Oriole player.
Boog Powell has a place.
He has a barbecue. Are you thinking of Brooks Robinson or?
now.
Does he have a bar there? No.
Shoot, maybe they've changed it.
Player right now.
Brooks is too all-American.
Yeah,
That's probably true.
maybe they've changed it. I don't know, but anyway, we've been outside the gates of Camden Yards and been able to look in, and I'm looking forward to a game there. And I love the fact too that they haven't sold the naming rights. That's a plus. So yeah, those are my two.
Rick?
You already called on me, I think.
No, Rick.
Oh,
Rick,
the other Rick.
Yeah.
We got two Ricks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, Blake, there's a lot I could say here, I guess. Cleveland's probably my favorite, but I'm partial to Cleveland. So, beyond that, Baltimore is really nice. And, we were talking about Atlanta before. And, I think that, Baltimore obviously was kind of a trendsetter in the early 90s of kind of this renaissance in ballpark design. And, I'm curious to see, with Atlanta, if there's other teams that kind of go that route. And, honestly, I'm kind of skeptical or doubtful if that becomes a successful trend like the Baltimore Renaissance that started in the early 90s. But anyway, Fenway's great. Wrigley's, I think, to me, stood out more from the outside kind of neighborhood experience as opposed to kind of the inside the ballpark experience. And then I think the other two I'll comment on, and then I'll shut up, is San Francisco and the view of the bay, beyond the stadium just really stood out to me. That was really, beautiful, besides just, having a fantastic ballpark. And then, Oakland is, one of the last surviving cookie cutter stadiums, but that was really, to me, kind of a time capsule to kind of go there and not just see a game there, but also kind of, going to the game on the rapid transit or rail that they have there. And then, kind of just walking up the huge ramp or gateway, whatever that is, that you go from the train station to the stadium. It just kind of seems like that really hadn't been updated in a long time. And, I'm sure it's changed a little bit since it was built in the late 60s or early 70s, whenever it was. But, it kind of, I think, harkened back to that time. And, I'm sure the A's days in Oakland are numbered at some point here. But I was glad to see that, even if it is, even if the stadium itself is, not modern or nice like a lot of the newer parks. But anyway, that's my take.
Hey, Rick, can I jump back in?
Yeah.
It's Dempsey's at Camden.
Okay. Rick Dempsey.
Yeah, the catcher.
Yeah. All right.
Good.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, it's called Dempsey's, if it's still there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Jack? You're mute. You're mute.
I have to vote for PNC if it qualifies as a major league ballpark based on the team. But sorry. It's beautiful, and I've seen a lot of games there, good games there. But it's unfortunate it's next to the football stadium because it's only 3/4 enclosed by the city. The real connection with the city is the Clementi Bridge. But I found that wonderful. I also kind of like Great American and agree with those who think that the orientation towards the river is a good idea. The thing that spoils it is all that smokestack theme stuff that they put in the way. I think that they had a very good ballpark, and then at the very end made a tasteless decision at the end. And for least favorite would be Municipal Stadium in April. I don't know how it compares to Candlestick for cold, but I bet you it could give it a run for its money. Sorry,
Joe?
didn't mean to be mean to the Pirates. I'm still bitter about 1960.
Yes, me too.
Fair enough. Joe?
Well, I've been to Camden Yards a number of times and I've enjoyed the experience. And I think by that, not only the game, but I've taken the tour of the stadium and I found that fascinating. And to me, that's a part of the baseball park experience I enjoy. Having said, and because also how important it was as a trendsetter. Having said that, and this is a lifetime Yankee fan, my favorite park experience is PNC. And not only enjoyed going to games there, but I incredibly enjoyed the tour. I was one of 5 people. I showed up in full Yankee garb. I got the requisite crap thrown at me in a very nice way, and then was really treated nicely. And they said, we'd like to show you, they have rooms inside for each of the Pirates World Series experiences. And they said, we'd like to show you the 1960 room. I said, well, we can do a drive-by, but there's this other one in the 20s I'd like to see better. And they said, sorry, it's closed today. But it was just a tremendous experience. And I love the experience has been described about, the city backdrop and so forth. So I would vote for PNC. The other park I just throw out that hasn't been discussed today is Petco Park in San Diego. Been to a number of games there. Have been, again, enjoyed the experience, not taking a tour there. One of the things that I liked was how they really treat in a respectful fashion the military community there. And to me, that all parks, they try to do something, but they really do it in a top-notch way at Petco. So for a variety of reasons, including that, I've really enjoyed the experience at Petco.
Joe, I just want to remark that one of my experiences at PNC was to be lured there by a Pirates fan for the 50th anniversary celebration of 1960, when all of the Pirates who had played there showed up on the field to gloat one last time.
Well,
my
wife,
the comeuppance over our Yankees.
Tough, yeah. Well,
sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. My wife's hometown is Wheeling, West Virginia, and to get there from Cleveland, we have to go through the birthplace of Bill Mazeroski, and I see the signs, and I grip the steering wheel a lot harder as I go through that part. With some passing comment like that guy doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. I don't know why he's in there. And then my wife says, "Clean up your act," and we move on.
Steve Bassford, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm on. My camera is not cooperating today.
Okay.
Yeah, my favorite would be Fenway Park for the atmosphere. And to make my top list, you got to get there by subway or rail. So that's the thrill of going to a game. So that checks off Fenway. Number 2 would have to be PNC. It's just beautiful. The site of the Clemente Bridge, and easy to get to. I don't know if you've ever taken the West Side bus. You can take the West Side bus from the left side. It's like a bus that goes like 50 miles an hour on its own track, or what do you call it? Its own route. Then take the subway over to PNC. Another thing I noticed about PNC Park, it seemed like the people there, the fans, they got to spend the most money on concessions any ballpark I've ever been to. Anybody can verify that? Everybody's got a tub of wings. Anybody else notice that?
Yeah, Primanti Brothers is huge. Yep. Did we lose you?
No, I'm still here.
All right. Nope, I've noticed.
Yeah, that's my take.
All right. Well, not surprisingly, my pick's PNC Park. I mean, for a lot of the reasons you guys, I mean, it happens to be my favorite team, but I also just feel like it's the best ballpark. I love the view. I love the fact that they've commemorated, the Hall of Famers with appropriate statues of Clemente, and I do feel like they misstepped when they got rid of the Negro League statues in the one area, but I think it's the best park by a lot for me. My second choice is the San Francisco AT&T Pac Bell. Again, if you're sitting in right field and you're looking down over the bay and big ball or ball glove out in the outfield. There's just some unique stuff. That's the smell of garlic fries. It's just there's just a ton to love about that park. You can take a trolley to block away from the game, depending on where you're staying in town. So that's my second. My one piece of a park that I love is I think Joe had mentioned Petco. Them turning that hardware store into like their gift shop, and those little balconies where you can go out and have a drink and watch the game from. I thought was a wonderful integration of a neighborhood. I thought that was, the angle is not even quite right, but that's okay. They made it work, and there's so much charm to that. And finally, just to give a shout out to one of the kind of donuts that I feel like is a underrated stadium. I think the Royals, they've really salvaged that to be a decent stadium. And I feel like it's, what they did with the outfield. I know it's an ocean of parking lot, and, the author here barely mentioned it because it wasn't deserving of talking that much about it, but I actually thought there was a lot of charm to that ballpark. So anyways, my uncomfortable experience is just how tight the seats are at Fenway. The stadium was built for smaller people, and it's really tough if you're someplace and somebody wants to get out of your road, just standing up trying to let them go by. And I mean, I'm certainly not the skinniest guy, but I'm also not the biggest guy. And it's just, you almost have to empty a whole aisle out if the guy in the middle wants out, because it's tight. But the charm of the neighborhood is just really tough to beat. You talk about that little walk around the ballpark. That's wonderful. So
For honorable mention, can we throw in Mudhead Stadium in Toledo in terms of integration into an old industrial neighborhood?
Yeah.
That's another HOK production, I think.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. All right, guys. Well, good discussion. Anybody have any parting words? We'll talk about maybe the next book. And
before we get too far, Blake, I think Joshua left the meeting, but he left something on the chat about the Baltimore chapter on June 2nd is going to have Janet Marie Smith talk. I don't know if any of you have ever heard her speak. She's an architect who has done the Camden. She was involved with Camden, Dodger Stadium, Fenway. She's a lovely lady. I got to know her a little bit, and she is a very good speaker, and kind of would be a great follow-up if you're interested in. I didn't read the book.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, you might want to sit in on that. It's going to be a Zoom meeting.
What do you remember? What the date was?
June 2nd.
I'll put that. I'll put that as a follow-up.
Yeah, that'd be good.
In our next news item.
Yeah.
So
good.
All right. Well, in terms of our next book, we always put whoever finishes second and third as like books of interest for the next time, which was Leo DeRocher and Bled Blue. I think the fourth book was A Day in the Bleachers, and the fifth book was Cuba and Louis Tion. Any different books you want to add to the to what we should vote on? So I got DeRocher and Bleed Blue. I don't know whether you guys want to keep Tion and Day in the Bleachers on there as well, but what do you guys, what do you folks think?
What is A Day in the Bleachers about?
I think it's a day in the Polo Grounds when Mays made his big catch. Am I remembering that? It's a
Yeah,
famous.
it's Arnold
That'll-
Haino.
Arnold Haino, yeah.
Used to write a lot of, well, he's written a lot of books. But he was also a writer for Sport magazine for many years. He was at that game, and he kind of dissects different fans and different aspects. He was in the bleachers for the game. It's a famous book. It's not very long. It's probably a pretty quick read.
I read it not too long ago. It's a good book.
Yeah, it's kind of an iconic book. I don't know about availability though, Blake. That's the only thing I would be concerned about. I don't know if libraries are still carrying it or if you'd have to purchase it. It's probably not a Kindle book because it was too old before the days of ebooks. So
I'll look into it, Rick. That might be one of those books that came out as like a 50th anniversary reprint or something. I know one of the books we were talking about, and maybe I'm thinking of Ball 4 or something, but where there were some reprints of the book, so they republished it for a umpteenth time, and this might be one of them. I'll check that.
Okay.
Anything else? Any others?
Blake,
Yeah.
the Columbus Metropolitan Library System does not seem to have any copies of A Day in the Bleachers.
Okay. Well, that's probably not
that's the drawback.
Yeah, I would say we probably shouldn't do that one. We've tried to adhere to making sure it's available, at least a few copies. Thanks for checking that, Larry.
Sure.
Any other suggestions? All right. Well, wow. So our choices. I've got 3 choices here: DeRocher, Bled Blue, and the Tiant book. I feel like I didn't want to nominate another book. I nominated Ballpark last time, and I don't want to feel like I'm pushing books, but
Especially since you count the votes.
well, especially since I count the votes. I want you guys to pick every other book.
Well, that was a great pick.
Regrets.
Yeah, I think based on Ballpark, you're entitled to another pick.
That's right.
I'm okay with that.
So, and anybody else have a book they've been wanting to talk about? Other things that we've considered is something on the Federal League. At some point I want to do a book on Brooks Robinson. Just he's my favorite, favorite non pirate in the history of baseball for me. He was an inspiring guy and a nice guy.
He had a better year in 70 than he had in 71.
He did.
Is
Is there a good
Ross
book,
give my
Robinson?
reds? No, I hate.
I don't know what the votes were, but I could take another run at adding the Federal League book to the, unless it had so little support last time that it would be an exercise.
No, it finished 3rd place in one of them. I'd be happy to add that to the list.
Blake, there's 3 books on the Federal League, so you could open that up for.
Yeah.
You've got the SABR book. You've got the Dan Levitt book.
Was that called the Outlaw League?
I think it was. We'd have to look that up. Dan Levitt. You might look that up, Larry, and see. Yeah. It's Levitt, Dan Levitt. And then there was a 3rd one that was out. The Levitt book and that 3rd one both won the Ritter Award, so they're both good books.
Yeah.
And then there's like everybody can get access to the SABR book.
Yeah.
And Blake, if I could recommend the Jay Jaffe book, Cooperstown Case book, that talks about a deep dive in the Hall of Fame. That is actually more readily available. I'm just looking it up now. The Columbus Library has, like 14 copies. The other book that I actually am a little bit more intrigued with, both, but the Tom Stone book that just came out, called Now Taking the Field, Baseball's All-Time Dream Teams for All 30 Franchises. That's just hit the presses, so it's fresh. But the only problem there is there's 0 copies in the library. So, but.
And I think, the one thing about Tom, I think we're going to end up probably having him at one of our meetings again.
Oh, okay.
He talked to the Cleveland group, which I participated in probably 6 months ago. And, it's such a dynamic book that he's putting out a new edition. So we kind of agreed that, we would want another discussion after the second book, because he admitted that, like, he's gotten so much feedback on that book that he's kind of revised some of it. People, because he did it for all the teams. So,
Right.
And he's a good speaker. I mean, I'd love to have it. I think we'll just schedule him though as kind of a talking baseball meeting.
Yeah, we actually, that was a joint meeting. We actually sponsored that, and maybe if we could maybe have him back do it again with Joe. I don't know if Joe. I guess
agree.
Joe left the meeting, but we had a great attendance. We had over 30 people, I think, at that, maybe 40 people. And he is a good speaker.
Popular. It was popular.
That would be great. I would absolutely love that.
All right. Well, unless Dave Powell's found something else back there, I see him looking at his bookshelf back there.
Yeah, it's hard picking one out. I did just pull this one off. Reggie Jackson and Bob Gibson.
All right.
I don't know if that does anything for anybody.
Is there a second?
Apparently not.
Apparently not. All right.
I don't know. What is it about? I mean, is it their career?
It looks like it's structured as a conversation between Jackson and Gibson about various aspects of the game. You can see it goes back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
On various topics.
When did that come out? I mean, is anybody else familiar with it? I've never heard of it before.
Came out in 2009.
2009, okay.
Yeah.
Blake,
yeah.
Before I got involved in the group, do I recall that you did a book on Commissioner Landis?
No, we haven't.
Mm-mm.
For some future time, that might be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple of the icons. I think we should read one at some point on Landis. I'd really like to read about Connie Mack, and the other guy is John Mcgraw. And I think with John Mcgraw, we probably want to do Charlie Alexander's book and have him as our guest. I know Charlie doesn't travel as much these days as he used to, but I think that'd be really good. So
we might be able to get him to come up. If not, he probably could do it by phone, whenever we want to do it.
I'll second John Mcgraw.
We should do it while he's still able to be with
I'm
us.
gonna add John Mcgraw to the list then. All right, so here's who I have on there. I didn't hear anybody like giving me a second on Tion. It didn't get many votes last time. I think somebody who had read it said some things that changed people's minds.
I just
But I,
started reading it, so I don't have a problem with that.
it's what?
I say I just started reading it, so I don't have a problem with adding it.
All right, well, we'll leave it on then. So I have Tiant, Federal League, John Mcgraw, Leo DeRocher, Dane in the bleachers, Bleed Blue, and Cooperstown Casebook. Who's the author on that, Jeff?
It's Jay Jaffe.
Blake, I thought we decided to take Day of the Bleachers out.
Oh, we
Did
did.
we?
You're right. Thank you. Good
Yeah.
catch. Because it's not available in the library. Yeah.
Right.
Good catch. So that's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books to pick from. The usual voting rules will be I'll tabulate I'll put the names of the books out in the email this week, in the next couple days. Give you a week to vote, and then rank them 1 to 3, because that usually separates them out. So any parting comments?
Is everybody hearing about SABR 50? Is there still a chance that that's going to happen in Baltimore in August? I haven't been able to find any real news about it.
I believe they officially canceled it a few months back, because they just had to commit, and at the time, there was just no telling when the CDC was going to open large gatherings up. So I feel like it was several months ago they pushed.
Yeah, they're going to, Rob, they're going to do a virtual again this summer at some
I
point.
must have totally missed that. I've been kind of holding out hope maybe we'd have a trip to Camden Yards this year, but apparently.
It's going to be next year. They already have a date for it for next year.
Baltimore?
Baltimore, same hotel, about the same time of year, isn't it, Blake?
Yeah.
They just put it off a year.
Yeah.
They couldn't do it. They had to commit, and the cost is just for a deposit is too great for them to take a chance.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. I just hadn't heard or missed it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Any other comments?
I will tell you, I have a new job. I'm an official scorekeeper for the Dragons now.
Good
Oh,
for
wow.
you.
Nice.
Congrats. Sounds like fun.
Yeah. Has been so far. I haven't heard any angry coaches call yet.
What's that
Mark,
status? What's the Reds fireballer status? Is he back from his Tommy John?
Yeah, he's pitching well.
Is he? Nice. Good for you guys. Okay. Good.
Which pitcher is that?
Oh, Hunter Green.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, he's with the Reds now,
I
right?
think he set a record. He threw 47 pitches and 35 of them were over 100 mile an hour or something.
Wow.
Wow.
In Colorado, we're getting killed out there this week. So,
Did anybody read? I just read it this morning. It was a comment from Don Mattingly saying there's so much emphasis on velocity right now that it's no wonder teams are seeing so many walks right now, because accuracy and control are the opposite of trying to get spin rates up and more velocity on their pitch. It was Don speaking his wisdom.
Yeah, look at Wade Miley. There wasn't a lot of velocity there.
So
where'd you see that article?
It was actually just a quote in the Dispatch this morning, kind of they said it, they always like pull out a quote from yesterday. So it was I think it was just this morning that I read.
It was this morning, probably part of a larger conversation, but it was very good, interesting comment.
Yeah.
So,
All right, guys. Well, thanks for showing, and it was a good conversation. I appreciate having everybody on board. And Rick Balls, it's good to see you again. It had been
Thanks,
a while.
everybody.
Same with
And-
you,
and-
Cindy. You
yeah,
hadn't been
Cindy,
here for a while.
Nice seeing Cindy and Rick. Yeah, good to have you back.
The rest of us, we're old hat.
Thanks, Blake, for this. Did a great
All
job.
right.
Blake. Good meeting.
Thanks, Blake.
Yeah.
Great meeting, great book.
Thanks,
Take care,
guys
all.
and gal.
Okay.
Take
Bye,
care.
everybody.
Stay
Yeah,
safe.
thanks.